Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Istenes, and I am the Open Source Program Office Strategist at Fannie Mae. I focus heavily on the contribution of open source outside of the company, regulations and policies of open source, the consumption of open source software, community building within special interest groups, and culture initiatives within communities of practice. I do a lot of policy and development work on our InnerSource program and all of the gray areas in between. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about leveraging open source software contributions within a secure InnerSource model. And I'd like to thank the team members at Tidelift for inviting me to talk here today. So we're going to talk about in today's session how an OSPO supports InnerSource initiatives, the impact of open source software and InnerSource, how we incorporate both of these practices, how Fannie Mae is bringing both InnerSource and open source together, as well as its direct impact within the enterprise. So, I want to talk just a little bit about what an open source program office is, or OSPO. An OSPO, we advocate for the open source engagement in a risk-averse, highly regulated environment. We partner with key stakeholders across the organization, such as legal, InfoSec, risk, our CISO partners. We have executives, technologists, managers, and everyone else that is impacted by all of the software development. We are central to a business function. 90% of software and applications is derived from open source software. And we have many responsibilities, but some of our core ones really are open source usage, InnerSource collaboration, and community. Within Fannie Mae, our OSPO is entrenched deeply within the enterprise and is actually very core to our business and our business models. And we aim to be the center of excellence for all things that encompass an open source program office. So, I really want to also talk about InnerSource. InnerSource is a really fantastic concept where you're taking the same principles of open source but applying it behind a company's firewall. We've seen InnerSource at work within the reduction of friction within your application development. We're increasing time to market within our innovation practices because we are able to reduce vulnerabilities and create stable projects. We also really want to ensure that we can innovate and do that increasing time to market by the reduction of duplicated efforts. We want to build an internal community and change the technical culture across the landscape. And by working together, you can do that. And InnerSource really creates a very strong engineering base. So the rise of InnerSource, right? I want to give kudos to the InnerSource Commons community. This foundation is a fantastic space with technologists and pioneers really trying to bring in that collaborative culture into their company. And so InnerSource, it's really coming in force across enterprises large and small. We're seeing many different track talks at these larger conferences talking about InnerSource. InnerSource is so fabulous because in many regulated industries we have a particular sort of risk-averse approach where we're not necessarily able to give back into the open, but through InnerSource, we still get that collaboration, but inside. We're creating and cultivating very healthy projects. And InnerSource methods, as mentioned, secure projects. More eyes on a project creates a very stable one. And it really does increase that innovation and improves the developer experience. So how can an OSPO support these InnerSource practices? I mentioned InnerSource is growing. I just look around and just see all of the different talks that are happening and the community of the InnerSource Commons community partnering with the Linux Foundation. It's really wild. And as mentioned, some companies have dedicated teams for InnerSource alone. And then we call them ISPOs, the InnerSource Program Office, you know. But many times these InnerSource practices, they fall within the open source program office. At Fannie Mae, we have dedicated team members for InnerSource to work on the facets of governance, for all of the developing and making our software products great. So that is fantastic, but that falls in the open source program office. You know, we focus on the company culture within convincing teams that opening up their projects will make things more secure and stable. You know, and our OSPO really is that conduit to bringing many teams together that otherwise would not know about the work that each one of them is doing. We have targeted a way in which we are the detectives and finding the pieces to put that case together. And we're also the subject matter experts that teach teams how to work together and build their projects with the inner source mindset thinking first. That's really our end goal. We want to teach all folks to work together, and we want to bring all projects, albeit even locked to a team, should set up with that growth experience in mind. You know, breaking down silos is so very important because we don't necessarily want to continue on that repetition path. So, you know, inner source and connections, you know, we talk about all across the industry, reducing technical debt. We need to reduce technical debt all the time. We want to increase our developer productivity, innovations, and partnerships, but we don't want to burn people out. So as I've been talking more about InnerSource and the OSPO, here's a really strong graphic showing how teams initially worked together, as opposed to how they should work together. You know, we have executives reporting to managers, and the dev team managers report to the dev team, and then there's that wall. And it's just the same pattern. And so before we incorporated this concept of inner source, there was that wall between the development teams, leadership, and management. But within a successful inner source model, you will see how all of these teams become intertwined and dependent on one another for success. And when everyone is succeeding, you grow. And that's the most important thing. So, you know, really, what can we learn from these technical communities? You know, how do we apply an open source program office driven approach and inner source best practices into daily work, right? So within inner source, we really want to have open participation, strong, clear contributing guidelines, and test suites are a key success for everything and successful merges. And then also with anything, you do have to have a level of governance. You know, there are rules that we do have to live by. Otherwise, we would develop in chaos and really just kind of live in the proverbial Wild West. And as a, I don't want to say older technologist, but as a seasoned technologist, I have been on the side of minimal guidelines, and it was a free for all with confusion, where all you're seeking for is just structure. And so this is why I appreciate this sort of mindset of collaboration, because we want to provide those strong guidelines when there's so much a need for this common practice, and pulls all of this completely in for success. So you can see our three buckets. You know, we want to talk about the transparency, open participation, and that really funds the community. And then the governance kind of keeps it all a little bit structured. So, you know, moving away from the impact of open source and inner source independently, I really want to talk about how these practices work together. You know, as mentioned earlier, open source comprises more than 90% of application software. So we need alignment. And, you know, because of that, things happen. Without alignment, we're always going to find vulnerabilities in source code. They're always prevalent, but now they're incredibly prominent. You know, December 2021 kind of took a lot of people by storm, and where we really want to not necessarily go back to that same place. You know, We all know that vulnerabilities affect all aspects of software development. And now, especially for myself, working in a financial services space, I have learned about the intense reasoning for risk, being risk adverse, and how important these are, things to think about when moving into that development space. And now, I'm not going to name the names of what happened back in 2021, but vulnerabilities are the talking points for so many teams, for, InnerSource program offices and open source program offices. We're all being looked to for the solution. And this is really coming from the rise of the SBOM, right? The software bill of materials. And this is here now. This is something that everybody's talking about. Supply chain security. We need to make sure that we have secure packages. We do want vendor supported solutions, but at the base, we still need to be with our maintainers. Our maintainers are the people that are doing the work and trying to keep up with the demand. So we want to make sure that we support them. And our maintainer community needs the support. A really interesting fact that I learned last fall, and it really put a lot of things in perspective for me, is that there was a potential risk that was going to happen back in November of 2022. I'm not going to name the name of the company or anything else like that, but this particular dependency, this particular library was being consumed over 1 billion times, 1 billion times. And it was in fact supported by 18 maintainers, 18, which it was just unbelievably wild to me. And so the biggest way to support these maintainers outside of monetary funding is to really give back to these projects that we rely upon. And so what are we as Fannie Mae doing about this? We want to make sure that we are not just consuming. We want to modify, we want to help. So, one thing that we need to really talk about, though, is you need a clean version of this particular dependency in order to consume it, because there are different sort of regulations that each particular enterprise has in place. So, really, what are we doing? So we're actually going upstream for a solution. I find this to be super fun. That the name of this conference is Upstream, and we're talking about going upstream and supporting our maintainers. So one thing that we're doing, and we started, is this clean dependency project. This is the very first project that Fannie Mae has released into the open. It's really cool. On github.com, clean dependency project. You can reach out to OSPO team at fanniemae.com, or you can find me here. Let me pull up my little video here. You can find me on LinkedIn if you would like to chat more about this. So, we want to go upstream for a solution. Last year, our leader, John Mark Walker, talked about the launch of the Clean Dependency Project, and now we're really going. So this is kind of fun to give a neat update of where we're at. So we really just want to be a part of the solution and not a consistent consumer. And so we're taking this clean dependency model practice with an internal InnerSource consumption. We have a trusted committer maintainer model. We have particular patterns to ensure that our engineers are solving these perceived vulnerabilities. And we have developed internal testing and a consumption suite in which they'll be applied to all of our internal teams. Our main goal being in mind that we'll create our own internal maintainers to advocate for the project. And then as we make these fixes, we're going to be giving back to the core maintainers. So, we're using this concept to bring these fixes in internally. Teams are working together to identify the need within their development scope. And we're applying all of these particular needs into the Clean Dependency Project and really taking this upstream problem-solving solution for our dependency and vulnerability management. We're proactively identifying and modifying dependency sources and cleaning them and then making them available. And so right now we're making them available for Fannie Mae, but this is an open source project. So if you do want to learn more, go and visit us there. So, I talked about the Clean Dependency Project, but, since this is Tidelift, I really want to talk a little bit about how we are leveraging Tidelift, right? We're working with external community for sustainable projects. We're using these particular compliance set of tools with onboarding application and analyzing their licenses to make sure that the dependencies all do work together in such a way when we are producing things outwardly. We work through vulnerability management best practices with that stable open source software project in mind. Leveraging Tidelift, we're paying the maintainers for the libraries that we rely upon, which is so fantastic. Going back to my reference earlier, 1 billion instances of use, 18 maintainers. That's absolutely incredible. And so that's happening. And we're staying up to date with version compliance and really the rise of the SBOM. So that's pretty neat. So, kind of pulling it all back in a little bit, InnerSource and the direct impacts from the Clean Dependency Project. The InnerSource model really ensures that these projects have eyes on them. And now when vulnerabilities come up and they're identified, we have a path to resolve them. We are trying to not impact our development process. So it's pretty exciting. InnerSource really impacts the projects so that when these issues do happen, they happen quickly. We can resolve them. Improving the developer experience internally while helping others externally is really fantastic too, because we want to make sure that we don't want to cause that dreaded burnout syndrome for anyone. We want to make sure that you're able to take some of your time off and, we have this direct stakeholder engagement. So, InnerSource and golden patches, upstream open source, app developers, and then it goes artifact and code repositories. We're streaming these patches for distribution. We've currently built and are still building upon a team to work solely in the open to make huge impact within this clean dependency project. The patches of the internal software, and they share the packages. We create the centralized distribution model, and we're training and enabling future open source maintainers through the trusted model of InnerSource patterns. And, we all have to work and engage within our stakeholders, so the Clean Dependency Project and direct stakeholders, you can see where we have the open source program office, we have leadership, we have the end customer, our engineering teams, trusted maintainers, external community, which is building out that good corporate citizenship, which is what we definitely need while mitigating risk by partnering with our security partners. And so we really didn't want to just put another project out there into the open. We really wanted to gauge how this project can make such a direct impact and really just tie in everyone to not only weigh in on the importance of InnerSource, but how open source really is maintained and managed. And so we're very excited where things are going. So definitely want to see where it grows. And, I'm very happy that I'm here today to share a little bit more about these common methodologies and how we're taking them to the next level. So honestly, why does this all matter? We engaging and creating a trusted committer maintainer model internally is very important for development and maturity. We want more teams learning about the Clean Dependency Project, as well as moving into this InnerSource mindset. We want more teams collaborating with one another because we've been so walled off for so long that we want to make sure that we all work together, because when we work together, we're happy, and more engineers are able to innovate faster using the Clean Dependency Project and InnerSource, and really just more to come. So with that, I want to thank Tidelift again for inviting me to be here today. And I just want to say thank you all so much. And you can find me on GitHub at Brittany Istenes, and you can also find me on LinkedIn at Brittany Istenes. Thank you.